Well, Jay Jennings is a veteran sports writer. He's well known to readers out there, having written for Sports Illustrated, the New York Times, many other magazines, newspapers. And he's got a book out called Carry the Rock, Race, Football, and the Soul of an American City. And he just happens to be on the line with us. Jay, how are you?
Hi, Phil. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. Now, of course, Carry the Rock has a couple of meanings. Carrying the rock meaning carrying the football, but also this takes place in Little Rock, Arkansas, your hometown.
That's right, and the local nickname for Little Rock is The Rock.
The Rock, yes. So this was in the wake of desegregation, which happened in 1957, I believe, and you were born in 57, so you grew up in the aftermath of that.
Right.
And how did things change? I'm sure they changed dramatically, did they not?
They did, but it's been a very slow process, and when after spending 20 years in New York as a journalist and deciding to return to my hometown, I found that there were a lot of changes in the city, but there are some ways that event in '57 that was so seminal has endured.
Yeah, and look, and the thing about it is racism has to wash out through the generations. I know my kids, my parents weren't really very racist at all, I wouldn't say, but my grandparents were just dyed-in-the-wool racist. And then, of course, I get to my kids, and they don't see any difference at all. I mean, they got black friends, and they just don't see anything about it at all. But sports has done a lot to heal that, has it not?
Exactly, and that's one thing that I was interested in pursuing, because in my own experience, my first experience with integration in the early '70s was playing on a integrated football team. I was bused across town to the junior high and went out for football a couple of weeks before classes, and by the all we were interested in on the field was just football, and so when I got to school, I already had 3 or 4 black friends who I could say hello to in the hall, and there wasn't that much tension. So I credit football with, an easy introduction to integration for me.
Yeah, and my kids are to the point now where it's even swung, the other way. I mean, we're big fans of Carolina basketball, and then the coach Roy Williams will throw a white guy in there, and then one of the kids will go, why are they putting the white guy in? I mean, so it really has swung the other way, where there's really, at least in my kids' generation, there's no prejudice. Matter of fact, there's prejudice against white athletes that they probably aren't as good as the black athletes.
Well, that's there's sports is a real meritocracy in a way, one of our best, and so if you don't perform, you're not going to play.
That's right.
So it's one of the things that's good about sports, I think.
Did you ever see Remember the Titans, Denzel Washington movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, and what a moving movie that was. Of course, came up at a time when they had integrated the schools. A lot of folks didn't like that, didn't like their kids playing football with black folks, and of course, he transcended all of that, being a black coach. And really, as you said, it's a great equalizer out there on the football field. It's all about who's the best, who can run the fastest, who can catch the ball, who can throw the ball, who can score the touchdowns.
Right, and we don't have many areas in our society where there's that, it's that cut and dried, how you perform. But one thing that was encouraging about hanging out with the kids on this football team was the sort of casualness about race. For them, 16, 17 years old, the integration crisis of '57 was complete ancient history. It might as well have been ancient Greece, because they can't imagine a time when they weren't allowed to, and blacks weren't allowed to go to school with whites, and they can't imagine a time when that would have been an issue.
Now, did you catch up with some of these early football players that were playing after desegregation and find out where they are today and how their life changed because of all that?
Some of it. What was interesting about it was that in the coaching staff of the team had a wide mix of people on it, many of whom had played, at the same time I had played, so that they were peers of mine. And what I saw them buying into was a sort of, trying to point everybody in the same direction and forming a team, and that's, race blind. The coaches that that were in control of that team. There were white, black, young, old, and there was just such an interesting group, various personalities. But when you're trying to point a team in the same direction, you end up all having the same goals.
Right. And race takes a back seat.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you have kids now?
I do not have kids.
Okay, I was going to say if you have some kids in school and maybe how they're reacting to all this, because I mean I really don't, and maybe I'm being a little bit naive about it, but I don't really see any of the racism that even I saw when I was growing up in the '70s and going to high school in the '70s. You just don't see a whole. At least I don't, and I'm sure there's some still there. But I mean, the kids these days seem to get along a lot better, and I think that a lot of times we make more about race than they think is there.
Yeah, there are still Minnie Jean Brown Trickey, who was one of the Little Rock Nine. I went to a speech that she gave in 2007 on the 50th anniversary of the integration crisis, and her point was that the kids were not in charge. At that time, she thought that if she'd been allowed to participate in extracurricular activities with white kids, and if the adults had set it up so that there would be this total integration, that she would have gotten along a lot better with the white kids. And I think that's an important point to remember, that there were people in charge who were in power, who were, had the most say. The kids themselves, they were being manipulated.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's still a lot of that going on. But see, sometimes now it's going on when there's predominantly black schools, is that the black kids are in charge and they feel that power too, wouldn't you think?
Well, one of the interesting things about Little Rock is that the school system is still, it's 35% white and 65% black, which is a good percentage for public school nowadays. And compared to Dallas or Birmingham or Memphis, where there's only 2 or 3% white students in the public schools. And what I think, if I were a parent, I would make my school decisions based on, what's best for my kid, whether it's private school or public school or whatever. And if I do think that the educational quality is paramount for parents. So I think the one thing that we've got to take care of with our educational system is just to make good schools, make good public schools, so that people want to go there, whether they're black, white, or other.
Right. Yeah, that is a problem out there with some of them. So how did what you saw and what you learned at Central High, which is the high school that you talk about in this book, and in 2007, different from what you thought you might see or learn? What did you go in there with some preconceived notions of what you were going to see, and did that change?
Well, in some ways, I thought it might be a rosier picture. Well, first of all, the team, they were ranked number 1 in the preseason, and if they'd run the table and had an undefeated season, and everybody was holding hands and singing "Kumbaya," that would have been a different kind of book. But they struggled during the season, and what it showed, I think, was the kind of lack of unity that transcends race. The team just was made up of a collection of individuals who weren't gelling for some reason.
They weren't playing as a team. Right,
and I don't think it had anything to do with race. They did tend to separate themselves by race, but in a way, I don't think it had any effect on the team. So, the lunchroom at Central High is still kind of segregated by race. The black kids sit together and the white kids sit together. But I think this is just a matter of convention and comfort rather than maliciousness towards anybody.
Right. That's who they're growing up with, probably in their neighborhoods, and that's who they feel comfortable with hanging out at school. So you think that high school sports is good for kids?
Absolutely. I'm a big believer in it, and I think that's my own experience, and what I've witnessed is that when you are having more casual interactions with people, when I saw the kids joking around or talking after practice by their cars or something, that's when you really get to know a person. It's not by sitting next to them in class or in those more formal and structured situations. So I think that's one thing that sports does. It brings you together in a more casual way, so that you can really get to know what people are like. Plus, you hold them responsible. You know, if your guard doesn't block and you get creamed by the defender, you know, you're going to hold that guy responsible. And this is part of what sports do for us.
Right. No excuses for anything, right?
Right.
Well, if people want to find this book, I assume that it's available at Amazon.com and other places, but also available at carrytherock.com. Is that right?
That's right. That's my website, and it'll have all kinds of information about the book.
Interesting. All right. Jay Jennings, and the book is Carry the Rock, Race Football, and the Soul of an American City. Appreciate it very much, Jay, and good luck with the book.
Thank you so much, Phil.
My pleasure.